Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Rantbox. Today, I have Nathan Ridley from Hermitage Works Studios. How are you doing, Nathan?
Hi, John. Hi, everybody. Yeah, well, thanks, yourself.
Good stuff. I'm not bad. I'm curious. I have a question for you. The question is, what is the cultural relevance of the producer in the 21st century?
Well, it's tough not to have a bias, as I do want to defend the fact that I have some part to play. I don't think it's a question of it being a dichotomy in the sense if you need someone or not. I think it's just whatever process works best. I definitely view, for example, my role more than being able to supply gear or obviously a nice recording environment. It's more about being part of the creative process, bringing an objectivity that maybe people can't find in their bedrooms, no? As there are a lot of bedroom producers these days, which in my experience has also brought great great stuff and great songs, so it's hard to say. It's yeah, different process approach, I reckon.
Okay. What you said made me think about something, how there is this idea of being the authentic musician these days, which encapsulates many different jobs or criteria, which arguably back in, say, the 50s, even going back further, was done by many other people. Where do you think that this can actually go in terms of people's idea of maybe relaxing on trying to do everything and maybe realizing that they might actually need someone who understands process like a producer would?
Sure. It might even come, this change, if there has been a change, might even come from like down the line in terms of the budget, the time, or even people's availability, that we might have shifted in terms of thinking that is not an essential part of the process. When the industry had loads of money, you not only had a producer, maybe a solo artist, a whole band connected to the studio waiting behind the door to be called up. You had a mix engineer, a tape operator. There were specific people for specific jobs. I think very just simply that a cut in budget might have shifted our way, and we still see it happening in different ways as budgets are cut and people find less means. We try and simplify processes as much as we can.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, again, with this idea of what I'll label the hybrid, the person who is a consumer and a producer, they're able to go onto YouTube and various other different places to get ideas as to how to meet industry standards. And yet, it might be prevalent for them to consider shadowing other people, such as yourself. I mean, how do you feel about that as a?
Well, it is weird to think sometimes, behind great records there are massive teams, and maybe it's something that on a certain level it's not a first thought, or people don't think. We like to also, how things are portrayed to us, we like to think we see a band and we like to think of them as geniuses, or this craft, or black magic that's been going on. But a lot of the times there's loads of people involved, and I even love working on some of my own stuff now. The first thing I'm thinking about is, what friend can I send this to to get a second opinion, to maybe my drummer friend. What do you think about the drum parts I've laid down? Or not in terms of do you like it or not, or in terms of is it the right feel? Would, you know, people that you trust in getting a second opinion. And that's what also working with someone, another producer, is finding someone you trust. That is definitely a big part in making that work, I think.
Sure. I can't help but overhear that because you're in the studio of Hermitage Works, I heard someone who has had a big impact on your idea process, Margo Bloom. Can you tell me more about what you've learned from her in terms of how to deal with bands and getting them to think, arguably, for want of a better term, outside of the box?
Absolutely. I mean, I started out, obviously, you walk into the studio and you open your eyes to all the knobs and all the wonderful machines that are around you. But then suddenly come to realize, obviously working with Margo and seeing her work, you know, maybe 70% of the job is psychological, in the terms of managing, you know, people's expectation of the recording process versus the results of it, knowing who and how to speak to each member even, or how to get the best out of people, finding that that flowing positive energy. Yeah, so I keep finding myself talking about this a lot more than actually what I might be doing when I'm fiddling. Do you know what I mean? A lot more related to finding moments with people.
Sure. I want to start off with perhaps the negative and go to the positive.
Sure.
Have you had an experience? Can you tell us one of the experiences that you may have had with a band where their non-cognitive ability disrupted the ability to deliver?
Well, certainly I can think of, and you know, I respect everyone's approach, and I sometimes also think, who am I to say what's right or wrong? No, it's the same as always. But I did find myself, for example, one time there was a member so curious of, I don't know if curious or controlling of what I was trying to do creatively, and me not stopping every step and explaining. Ended up, I think, in them stopping me, constantly asking, and I completely respect the curiosity, and I always thrive to explain what's happening so I can allow the band to develop, start thinking how I'm thinking, so that even if we develop a relationship, the next time they bring a new track in, they've potentially thought about what I'm thinking about when they bring me some songs, right? So I always think that's a positive thing, to include people in how we're thinking as a producer, so they can start to take that on. But in that case, it just felt hindering. It just felt like it was kind of freezing the moment a bit rather than letting it flow. Yeah.
This, and I could be wrong, but it does sound like there are bands who will come to you to do what it is that they really want to do but don't know how to do, but are unwilling to let go simply because they've been taught about the pack mentality within a band and that everyone's out to get them. Do you think that is something that has, I mean, I think it came from the D.I.Y. punk movement a lot more than any other period, because then it was really about questioning the establishment. But do you have any views on this before we go to the positive and more?
Yeah, well, my kind of way around this, I think I understand that this is everyone's baby, if to put it some way. You know, everyone has this baby that they've put so much time into, and you know, sometimes gives them purpose, sometimes helps them through whatever else they're dealing with. So I understand the importance and emotional attachment to it. My way around it is to involve myself in that, and hopefully, if I'm also, you know, vibing with what we're working on, I can show that I have my best interest, and that I also, to a certain extent, I'm part of the band in that moment, and I'm looking to actually find that thing that they're intending to do and elevate it. So connecting and reassuring people that I'm on that level, and we're trying to level this up. Yeah.
Sure, sure. So let's move on to that positive example. And there's many bands you've worked with. I mean, at the front of my mind at the moment, I'm thinking of Wizard Sleeve. Is there
Sure.
any particular example you can give of working with them where you were, well, keen to get them into a certain place using a way of questioning process?
Well, for me, one example was they came in for a weekend and they had 2 songs they wanted to record. So they're from Brighton, so they came up the night before, stayed the night, and while we were setting up some drums and stuff, they were playing some of their live videos of a gig they played a week or 2 before. And there was this one song that popped up, and I was like, man, what is, I remember walking to the room being like, man, what is this? You know, they were like, oh, it's just this, you know, this song that we have. And I'm like, we're recording this, right? And they were like, no, we've come to record another 2. I'm like, well, we'll see about that, right? And so obviously you deliver, and we want to get what, you know, what people have come to do. So we recorded those 2 songs, and then I remember everyone being happy with that and just saying, okay, everything's set up, right, guys? We still have everything set up, so let's do a take of this of that song that I enjoyed so much. And, you know, everyone was like, oh, okay, and everyone was really relaxed because we'd done what we come to do. So it just was a one take wonder, and I just remember that feeling when everyone ends the song and everyone's looking around like, whoa, we just we went somewhere, right? And then getting Raz in, the vocalist, and he just did a one take also, went nuts on the song. Just a perfect kind of coming together of, I think, states of mind, definitely. And, you know, a lot of people talk to me about coming in and having red light fever, and I feel sometimes when that pressure's off and you suddenly you know, get a take out of whatever else, it can be magical. So I maybe the thing to take from it is that there's not one way, definitely. And
Okay.
yeah, and opening yourself to being free and enjoying the space. Yeah.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, especially when it comes to red light fever. I mean, this idea that when you go into another place away from where you've maybe created the song, you're quite comfortable there, normally the bedroom or living room, and then you're in a completely different environment and people freeze. Your job, I guess, essentially is to be like artist liaison, you know, not just the technical side of things. Do you have any particular tricks that you want to give away for any of the budding producers out there?
In terms of
Getting people to chill out.
yeah, well,
Remember, this is a channel where people might be watching who are under a certain age.
No, very correct, very correct always. No, to be honest, everyone that's worked with me will know, you know, my first thing I like to do is just to sit everyone down in the room and just explain that, you know, I want to be part of this now and be on the level with everyone, and I'm going to share all of my thoughts and everything that I think, with no filters or exceptions, and that it's totally for us to have that discussion, and ultimately for the artists to agree, and for us to come to a positive, elevated conclusion, hopefully. But yeah, just getting on a level with people and just explaining how, you know, we're here to be honest and not to offend, and try to get the best result there.
Sure, sure. I mean, in my mind's eye, I was hoping you were going to say, well, I sit them down in the room and I buy them shots and then I get out a
Well,
special number.
you
I call
told
my
me
friend.
you told me to be correct, John. I think there are some things that people should come and experience for themselves. I,
No,
no spoilers, no spoilers.
this does segue into perhaps a more serious question. I feel that there are certain bands who have an idea of what it is to be in a band, and if they haven't been in a band for a long time and then come to you with that caricature or that performance, that it might be in your best interest to do either one or two things. You either dismantle with them what it is that they're doing, and they can maybe get an inkling as to be more authentic. A very dodgy word in this context. Or you understand that they're going to be a performance thing even when they're not taking, and have to roll with that. Where do you stand on those two different paths that you could take them down?
It's hard. Again, it's hard to say or even to think that there's one way of going about it, and every band has different personalities and different characters. Your question did make me think a lot about even people. Maybe people have been playing in a band and know very well what the dynamics are, but then bringing that into a recording studio can be quite different, and especially if you're working with someone else like me, or kind of also steering creatively. I find myself thinking how there seems to be a democracy sometimes trying to be applied, be it in a rehearsal room, that sometimes can be inefficient in a recording space when you are you're trying to dissect parts with individual players sitting the guitars down, working through the parts, not just hitting record. We're like, how does this fit in now with the drum adjustments that we've made? And having that time with everyone individually, a lot of times has paid off for me. And this idea of democratic, or turning around constantly, everyone constantly asking, what do we think? Depends on the people, but it can sometimes facilitate great ideas. Sometimes it can slow things down.
Yeah, we've definitely worked, you and I, on projects where bands have come in and they wanted to have an engineer, but they have misunderstood of the big gulf and significance of there being a producer for the layman, and for bands who haven't maybe thought about that and are watching this. What would you say is the biggest difference between an engineer and a producer in the 21st century for you?
It's a very gray area, I think, because if I were to place mics and EQ beautifully and engineer very well, if there isn't the right production, if there is no producer involved and I'm just there engineering, if there is no production aesthetic applied, or even making sure parts are in tune, parts are rhythmically played correctly, it's gonna sound as if it's engineered badly. Do you see my point? Something can sound great, but if it's not in time, it's gonna sound completely off. The mix isn't gonna work. So I think it's a really gray area we find ourselves in. There's this ancient book called The Art of Mixing by David Gibson, and I found it really curious when I read that a few years ago. How I was just expecting it to go straight into engineering details, and it's got a first whole chapter on just basically saying, hey, you're the engineer now, but you're actually responsible for this, and it's everything I'm saying, pitching, timing, all of these things come into maybe for David Gibson come into play for the engineer also.
Okay. Um, do you feel that there is more expected from you in terms of, say, bands delivering something of a cultural significance or an event, or even the role of gender politics? Where does that all come to play in your experience of being a producer? I know it's quite heavy, but I'm keen to tunnel down this avenue with you.
Could you rephrase, please,
Okay, so
or say again?
yeah, sure. Being a producer now arguably means that you will be dealing with people that, not that there weren't sensitive, subjects before, our day and age, but now communication being what it is. Have you ever found yourself in a position where you're having to understand a new POV in terms of that band's gender or say social acumen?
Well, of course. I think if anything, music is part of culture, and if all those other cultural things will feed into what we do, definitely. And it's all also, again, this is where the psychology, I think, um, comes in again, and it's understanding who you're working with and what we're trying to do, and if we're trying to push boundaries with lyrical content, or we're trying to not push boundaries but take references in something that's happening now. It's always we're always needing to be in touch.
Sure, sure. Can you give any examples of any situation where that played into your experience as a producer?
Well, I can definitely think of, for example, certain events happening after something has been recorded and lyrics needing to be changed, or because of potential nuances that might, incline thoughts towards maybe something that isn't really apt. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Is this in reference to, obviously, we're not going to mention the band, but are
No,
we
of
talking
course.
about the prevalence of say, cancel culture? In that if a band or individual or organization is aligned with something in a certain way that is not deemed to be acceptable.
Yeah, and I understand. I don't necessarily think it's cancel culture. It's not that that person meant that, but it is the say the forming of phrases that might, if something happens, then we think of a word and we join it with that event, rather than before maybe it hadn't had that significance, right? So it's not necessarily that it's cancelled, but it's suddenly been given a new meaning.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I mean, before, in my mind, before that was, I was almost going to say a contagion. Before that was a variable. We had the only real exterior impact that could probably shift the band's focus from who they are to being something that is more acceptable would be the pressure of capitalism. In terms of them joining, say, their song to a specific product or advert that wasn't in line with their principles. I mean, the first go-to thing will probably be, I don't know, say John Lydon with that butter commercial, or
Sure.
Iggy Pop with the insurance ads. And yeah, Iggy Pop has survived because, like, fuck it, let him make his money. He made no money in
Yeah,
the 60s, let him do it. Whereas John Lydon is probably more contentious within the punk crowd that he
yeah.
has not necessarily been what it is that he proposed he was. Though, to be fair to John Lydon, not that it's my prerogative really, is that at the time he was saying that, did you ever feel that we've been cheated? He was already aware that it was a self-congratulating entity, and that it shouldn't have been seen as being the more authentic thing. So if there's a question in any of that, I don't know, but I'm sharing thoughts with you.
I definitely think it's how those different personas have portrayed themselves, and I'm not saying that Iggy Pop hasn't been political, but I think we definitely associate someone like John Lydon with punk principles and aesthetics, and are maybe shocked more by something like that, rather than knowing Iggy to be flying off of stage and, hey, well, he's doing an insurance ad with his really cool vocal that we all still love, so yeah.
Yeah. we'll be wrapping up in a little bit. I just want to chase this a little bit down. So, do you find, again, this whole lineage of expectancy to do all these different jobs, to have the persona that is completely intrinsic to the ideology of what they're putting out, can that be in itself, and I will use the word now, can that be a contagion to bands coming in? Because let's face it, sometimes you might be a 25-year-old who lives in Surrey and has always had four houses, not four houses, four rooms in their house that aren't really necessary to do with mod cons. And yet you have a certain leather jacket, you have a certain idea of what you want to put out there. Can those two different, say, personalities become an issue in the studio?
Again, it's about finding someone on a level, finding someone you're confident to share with emotionally. Hopefully, that's what I hope when we're working here in the studio. Sorry, I've had a bit of a brain freeze now. I'm sure we can cut. But what was the you were saying?
What I can say is this, just to make it even more clearer.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry, I have an answer. I don't think necessarily, you know, sorry. I think a band looks for what I would want. I usually think about what I would want if I were in a band's position, and when sharing this creative moment, I would want a persona. I am looking for a persona, not only rather than aesthetics or the leather jacket, as you're telling me, is a confidence in what they're talking about, or a confidence in their knowledge of the music that they've listened to or produced. And that's the, you know, the character I'm trying to put across, and not in a putting it on sense, but bringing that part of me to the table for everyone to then, psychological again, feel that they're in a confident space, ready to take risks, ready to, you know, make maybe something that's a hard decision because of how attached you're to something. I think you will be able to make something like that if someone in my position presents confidently.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely a defining trait of my privy to working with, because if people aren't investigating who they are, they won't necessarily know what a risk is. They might think just in the being of them being in the room with like you and like three other people that are in the band that they're making the risk. When reality is they turned up to make, I don't know, Sergeant Pepper again. And it's like, I don't think the world necessarily needs to hear Sergeant Pepper from them. It'd be more valuable to hear what they are.
But I think the main point of what you said is, I don't think it's necessarily what we're wearing, or it's what we're saying and how we're saying that.
Yeah, for sure, sure. In wrapping up, is there any other particular thing that we could actually talk about in regards to the specifics of Hermitage Works that might be interesting for the viewers? Because I have to say, I go to various different studios and they've all got their quirks, all got their unique aspects. But unlike any other studio I've been to, Hermitage Works seems to be a place where it doesn't feel like any work's being done, even though it doesn't feel like an office environment. Even looking at the background there, I mean, viewers, if you're not aware that this is part of the studio. So yeah, can you tell me a bit more about that ability to put across a laid back atmosphere?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we mainly, because we've thought about the psychological, again, as I've said many times, we're very keen on making a physical contact. Having people come in, let's have a chat. What are your ideas? What or tell me a bit about yourself. To then pre-production, which I like to include in you know, as part of the package of what we do here, pre-production, allowing people to, you know, allowing me also to sit in a room with everyone and play and get a first feel of that live thing, to be able to think about how to translate that onto a record. The best results has always been when I've had an opportunity to do that. It allows people to, you know, get comfortable with the space, understand the vibe, and not step in for the first time on the day being like, whoa, where are we, and what are we doing, and who am I working with, right? So it allows me to have that interaction. It allows people to get to know the place, and that interaction allows me already to, you know, talk about some pointers and already start working on it. So even though we're laid back, we're relaxed, we have time to see each other and talk, we're actually cracking on in different ways. Maybe getting someone to just come and talk for a couple of hours might not seem that you're working on the track, but you're already working on potentially the confidence when they come to record, and being comfortable and allowing for those results to happen.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Nathan, this has been fundamentally a spiritual awakening.
Thank you, John.
Reawakening. I feel born again. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you for
to the audience.
Great questions.
Great answers. Where can people find the studio online should they wish to visit?
Well, we have a Facebook page, but most importantly an Instagram. So it's just at Hermitage Works Studios, and you can find some weird and wonderful pictures and content about what we're doing here.
Indeed, I will add a link into this description. Thank you for watching us, people. If you do intend to watch more of us, then you just have to press Rantbox TV into your search engine and you should find us. Great. Have a wonderful day or evening.
Thanks so much. I don't know what time of day it is outside.
You're a musician. You're not supposed to know. Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.